Hey guys, it's been a while, hasn't it? So I was a media member this year at Wrestlemania in Las Vegas, and I wanted to make a video to show you what that was like. I had an absolute blast participating in WrestleMania Media Day. The event moved around so much from its originally scheduled time that unfortunately it meant that I had to miss seeing Stardom. Well, maybe next year. However, I wasn't going to miss an opportunity to talk to my hometown guy, Ricky Saints. Much to my surprise, he remembered me from our previous interaction sitting on a couch in a green room at Lakefront Arena before AEW Dynamite. He was excited to see me, and even more so for the gifts I gave him off camera. It was just a little taste of home, a bag of cookies from Bricados, if you were wondering. I also discussed Wildcat Sports with Eric of the War Raiders, talked with Stephanie Vicker and Lyra Valkyria. If there's one thing I wish that would have been better communicated, that the superstars were going to rotate between stations, maybe that's just on me for misunderstanding, but I was bouncing back and forth between the stations and wrestlers were moving from one to another before I was able to get them. It was a learning experience for sure, and I'll know what to do for next year. I stayed at the Westgate Las Vegas for two reasons. It was within walking distance of WWE World at the Las Vegas Convention Center, but it was also the host hotel of that other wrestling convention that comes into town that week, WrestleCon. If you hadn't heard of WrestleCon, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a wrestling convention. It started in 2013 and is ran by the folks over at highspots.com. If you've never heard of High Spots, I'm awfully surprised you've made it this far into the video. They're a wrestling merch website. I first heard of them during the late 90s when I started to order wrestling VHS tapes off the internet. I also had a booth at WrestleCon during WrestleMania 30 weekend in New Orleans. Maybe one day I'll share the story about Sonny at that convention. Anyway, the convention has grown quite a bit since those early days and has become a staple of WrestleMania weekend for wrestling talent that isn't affiliated with the WWE or those on Legends deals. I have to say, the Westgate was a really nice hosting venue. The ballrooms were spacious, and I really loved the layout of the convention this year. There was a great selection of talent representing every era of professional wrestling, and the convention itself was easy to navigate. Never at any point in my time there did I feel like I couldn't find who I was looking for. So yeah, I like WrestleCon. If you're a fan, you get more bang for your buck with more personal and intimate interactions with the wrestlers, especially when comparing it to WWE World. I will say, though, it bummed me out a little bit that the price of the admission no longer includes the live wrestling. Maybe that was a specialty for when it was in Dallas a couple years ago, but paying $80 for the superfan ticket and getting to attend multiple wrestling shows, that was quite a steal. WrestleCon is insanely fairly priced at $40 for a 4-day pass. Although they did announce that Sunday's admission would be free. And speaking of Sunday, this is an unfortunate thing. I noticed that several WrestleCons I've attended over the years, sometimes talent just leaves early if their tables slow down. Same with the vendors. So if you're attending on Sunday, well, that's just a heads up. Just be aware that you might not be able to meet who you want to meet. But if you enjoy going to pop culture conventions and love pro wrestling, you should absolutely check out WrestleCon. Now, WWE World, on the other hand. Full disclosure, I was given a media credential for World at WrestleMania, and I attended multiple days. The footage you're watching is from Monday morning, where it's significantly less crowded, and especially if you go early. If you're looking to get good pictures and videos, that might be the best day to attend. You'll see a lot of the cooler things that I thought were on display at both the World and WWE Superstore. In my opinion, WWE World at WrestleMania is a mixed bag that actually leads me wanting more. It really depends what you're hoping to get out the experience. There's interactive exhibits like doing superstar entrances, hitting Logan Paul with a steel chair, the ability to hone your commentary skills and call a match right on a thank you John Cena wall. There's a booth where you could play some WWE 2K and interactive photo ops like the War Games shark cages, amongst other things. There was also a tattoo parlor and a wedding chapel that featured Brother Love's suit and Stephanie McMahon's wedding dress. You could even have wedding ceremonies on one day during this. Well, Vegas, right? Perhaps the biggest attraction seemed to be people wanting to do their own superstar entrances. I didn't do this, but it was funny to see people act as their favorite wrestlers. I don't know how large the list of superstars to choose from was, but it was interesting to see some of the selections like Iron Sheik. I miss you, Sheiky baby. Hakutua. Cracked me up to see that they seemingly blew up what seemed to be like a 240p YouTube video and And to say it looked bad blown up on that gigantic, massive LED HD set would be a bit of an understatement. But the guy doing the entrance had a blast, I'm sure. It was great to see that tribute to the Iron Sheik. I actually called two matches this year. It was something I've always wanted to do. Bit of a bucket list thing for me, really. The first one I called was Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker from WrestleMania 25, and the second being Hulk Hogan versus The Rock at WrestleMania 18. But I remember seeing the old WWF Fan Fest footage from Coliseum home videos showing similar booths, and I always thought that was the coolest thing in the world. But I have to say, having done it, unfortunately, it kind of let me down as it wasn't a very long experience. The way it works is you walk up to a tablet, select your match, type in your email or phone number and all other contact information, sit down, throw on a headset, and you get about a minute of action to call. I will give them props. They did have up to four headsets, so in case you wanted to call a match with family or friends, I just wish there was a way to make the experience a little bit longer. And I wish there was a wider variety of matches to choose from, more than just recent WrestleMania matches, but I know I'm probably in the minority there. And I can understand not wanting to have too many options for people to choose from because they've got to get people through the exhibit. Maybe before registering, right before you call the match, maybe you should be able to pre register and just scan a QR code that contains all that information on what you want to do before you arrive. I don't know. I'm sure there are many ways to improve this experience. I just wish it was a little bit longer. I wish I had gotten to hit Logan Paul with a steel chair, but sadly the line was closed when I went to go make my way towards that booth. I watched a few NXT matches, and I was a little surprised that there were no bleachers set up around the ring for seating. Back when Access was in New Orleans, they had a first come, first served bleachers set up so you could sit and watch the matches after your meet and greets. The only thing I saw was seating for some ADA folks, and I'm glad they had the option. I also found it a little strange that they used the same entrance stage that they were using for the fan superstar entrances. So when the wrestling was going on, they basically killed 30 minutes of that attraction off. Weird considering Access used to have the stage set up for the superstar entrances and then an own little entranceway for wrestlers making their way for their NXT matches. But it was some fine wrestling in between the other ongoings. Perhaps my favorite thing each year might be just seeing all the classic wrestling memorabilia on display and set pieces. I absolutely love seeing everything from yesteryear. From championship belts to entrance attire to used in ring gear to everything else in between, there's something special about seeing these magical moments of history on display. I couldn't really explain it to you even if I tried, but seeing a lot of these things just hits right. This year's big exhibit was basically a shrine to Triple H, a Triple H museum, if you will. In it was a TV playing a retrospect of his career, various ring attires, the WWE Undisputed Championship belt from 2002, which is one of the greatest belt designs ever made, let's not lie to ourselves, Ric Flair's big gold belt, a tribute to his good friend Lemmy of Motorhead, and multiple mini setups of his various WrestleMania entrances. It's kind of wild to see how many specialty entrances he participated in over the years, but hey, they were all on display and they were all pretty cool. I don't think anyone could argue against Triple H going into the WWE Hall of Fame from both his in ring career and work as an executive, so congratulations, Triple H, on getting in. I always love seeing this wrestling history on display. Maybe one day they'll build a physical Hall of Fame or offer tours of the WWE archive. Hey, one person can dream, can't they? Now, I didn't participate in any meet and greets at WWE World, so I can't really speak on the experience of what it was like. However, my friend participated in several and told me they're very strict on how long you can talk or interact with a superstar. I completely understand this because they have to keep the lines moving. It's just up to you if you want to decide to spend your money on such a brief interaction. It sucks to spend these high dollar prices just to maybe interact with your favorite wrestler for less than 30 seconds, especially when some of these people come from so far away and this may be their only chance to actually have any interaction with their favorites. I don't like it, but I understand why they do it the way they do it. Before Fanatics took over, only the top tier superstars or legends had an additional charge for their meet and greets for WrestleMania access. Now they're charging for almost everyone outside of a few select NXT talent and even less WWE main roster guys. I don't know if this was a TKO call or a Fanatics decision, but seemingly everyone charges now, and that's kind of a bit of a bummer from a fan perspective. I just hope the guys and gals are making great paydays for these meet and greets. I also don't really love that you couldn't bundle an autograph or a photo together. You had to pay for both individually, and there was no real savings on doing so. Also, it was really strange that certain talent was only available for either just a photo or just autographs. I don't really quite understand the purpose of that. In the past, you've had the option to take significantly cooler looking photos inside the Elimination Chamber with your favorite superstars. Now it's just a black WrestleMania backdrop, and let's be honest, that's a lot less fun. Admittedly, I'm just wish listing here, but imagine if they set up a similar looking area to the backstage interview set up on TV for your photos. You could take a photo with your favorite superstar on that set, and they could rotate whatever graphics best fit the moment. It could be from Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Legends, whatever branding they wanted to use for that particular photo. If physical sets can't be an option, maybe a green screen can do the trick. I think there's so much potential in what WWE World could offer than what they actually deliver on. I just think this would add so much more to the fan experience and getting a photo. And remember, nostalgia sells, so people will see these sets and freak out and enjoy themselves and want to spend more money. Maybe I'm unfairly comparing the two, but I kept looking for things that were at Access that were on display and added just a little bit more character and would break up the monotony that WWE World seems to be having. There used to be a section covering the history of WrestleMania with these ginormous posters for each show telling the history of the event. Those seem to be MIA. There was a Hall of Fame section, although I thought it was rather small. I felt like it should have more interactive photo ops as well. There were a few, a giant box of Yeets, the NXT skull, some various WrestleMania signage, as well as the WWE Championship and UFC Championship. But where were the more interactive photo ops like the ECW entranceway or Piper's Pit? Look, I know you don't want to repeat the same thing multiple times, but I did feel like the convention needed more photo ops that people could interact with. The Heartbreak Hotel and Wedding Chapel were great, but what wasn't so great was that they were roped off, not allowing for people to take pictures on the sets. A few years ago in Dallas, you could take a photo on Alexa's playground with the giant swing and doll Lily. I think most fans would strongly welcome things like this to return. Imagine a Judgment Day clubhouse set, or maybe a picture in a Chase U classroom. The possibilities are really endless. But hey, if you really want to get crazy, remember a few years ago how the Undertaker's graveyard was a big popular attraction at WrestleMania Access? What if they made a walkthrough attraction that was based on the Wyatt Six compound or the Firefly Funhouse? Maybe even make it a little haunted house. Anything that brings some sort of unique attraction to the experience on top of what we're already getting would be really fantastic. I feel WWE World has all the potential in, well, the world. But as I said when I started talking, it's really about what you want to get out of it. It's a convention where I feel like once you've seen and done everything, there's really no reason to come back on multiple occasions, unless that is you're meeting other superstars. Alright, I guess it's time that we talk about the WWE Superstore. It's going to have most of everything you could possibly want from WWEshop.com and the event itself. From shirts to hats to action figures to championship belt replicas to a box of frosted yeets to custom jerseys to WWE themed undies? Well, that was interesting. If there's something you desire, I'm going to tell you this. Do not hesitate and purchase it immediately. You might miss out on it if you look for it a couple days later. Things will and do sell out, and I'll share two stories related to this. All I really wanted from the store was a Penta mask, a onesie for my friend's upcoming kiddo, and a WrestleMania whiskey glass. I was trying to keep it simple. The first time in the store, there was a small setup of masks that mostly had Rey Mysterio, Kane, and the more Wyatt Six masks than you could possibly imagine on display. I didn't see Penta in there, so I thought maybe they were elsewhere in the store. I see another fan walking around with one, and I asked him where to get it. He told me where, and it was the exact location with the other masks. He told me he grabbed the last one of those, and I thought to myself, well, shoot, maybe it just wasn't meant to be. So I grabbed my whiskey glass and onesie, I checked out, went back to the Westgate, dropped off my stuff, and then returned to WWE World. I watched some NXT live matches and thought to myself, hey, let me go check out the store again. That's when I scooped up my Penta mask. I made one more lap around the store, and they were already sold out quickly. That's crazy how fast that they were flying off the shelves. At that moment, I called my friend who I knew was standing in line for one of the meet and greets. He wanted the collector's cups. He had been going to WrestleMania for several years in a row, and it was kind of his thing that he just liked getting the collector's cup. I called him up and asked him, I said, "Hey man, things are flying off the shelves. Do you want me to get you guys the cups?" He told me no, that was okay, that he would just get it a day or two later before we leave. I said, "All right." And well, guess what happened? He didn't end up with the collector's cup. I guess the moral of this story, everyone, is if there's a piece of merch you want at a big event you're going to, just buy the freaking merch. I know everyone likes to dump on fanatics. It tends to be a popular thing to do. And while I do miss the old WWE shop and quality of merchandise, I'm mostly looking at this from the ability to run a convention. The store was great. It was very easy to find whatever you might be looking for. Everything was laid out rather nicely, and it was spacious late at night. Pro tip, the store stays open really late. If you want to avoid the crowds, that might be your best time to go. Just do keep in mind, if there's a particular piece of merch you might want, you might miss out on it. Is that trade off worth it to you? I'm really trying my best not to be too harsh on fanatics for WWE World. It is their second year running it, so maybe they can improve, and hey, maybe the right person will see this video and take some of my ideas at heart. But I have to say, WWE World is a mixed bag for me. I think it's pretty fun, but fun for one day. Once you've seen and done all the attractions, there's not much left to draw you back, unless you're doing multiple superstar meet and greets on different days. Maybe if the guy at the Netflix booth had allowed me in line to smack Logan Paul with a steel chair, I'd think differently. But then again, that guy was just doing his job, and I walked up to the line right as WWE World was closing, so, I understand completely. Also, a shout out to the guy at the Las Vegas Convention Center who allowed me to purchase the three WWE Seagram canned seltzers without opening them so I could bring them home as a unique souvenir. Then, after I got home, I went to the grocery store and saw them in stores in much smaller cans. So that's pretty funny. I will say, despite all my critiques and nitpicks, I do recommend WWE World. Just know what you're getting before you go. I wanted to do something wrestling adjacent, but not another wrestling show. A few years ago, I was making a trip to Tampa. During that weekend, the WWE was hosting the Royal Rumble. It wasn't the Rumble that I was interested in, it was this other event that piqued my curiosity, the Undertaker One Dead Man show. The Undertaker just started doing these, and there wasn't much feedback regarding these shows. But I was intrigued. Pro wrestlers are some of the greatest storytellers in the world. What would he do or say on stage? I didn't go that night in Tampa. Funds were tight, and I couldn't fit it in my schedule. But when I saw he was doing one in Las Vegas after WrestleMania Saturday, I thought to myself, hey, get the cheapest seat and see what it's like. Well, that $50 ticket somehow became $80 because of taxes and fees, but that's a whole other issue. Once my friend and I arrived at the Fontainebleau, we went to get our tickets scanned. Ticket Taker 1 told us to go enter using the VIP entrance. I thought that was odd as I had not purchased VIP tickets. So we hopped in that line, and that VIP ticket taker told us that our seats had been moved and that we needed to go see the box office. Well, we went over to the box office, and it turns out our cheap seats up in the balcony had been upgraded to floor. That was really awesome. I couldn't believe that I had such luck. Before you're allowed in the theaters, sadly, phones and electronic devices are stored away in little bags because they don't want any recordings or pictures of the event. It kind of sucks not to be able to have a picture of Taker on stage telling his stories, but I understand the rules. The show itself was pretty entertaining. He told stories throughout his career and had some special guests like Michelle McCool and Dennis Knight. I'd easily do this again just because you're likely able to get a different show and set of stories. It was a lot of fun. And now, what you're really here for, the meat and potatoes of the matter, I'm going to tell you about all the live pro wrestling I consumed over my 6-day Vegas trip. You'll see footage from the WWE ID tournament opening round, two Dragon Gate shows, TNA Unbreakable, NXT Stand and Deliver, and both nights of WrestleMania 41. I won't be giving you full show or card breakdowns, but I will give you my general thoughts and consensus of each show that I attended. Buckle up, as this probably will be the most you actually ever hear me discussing modern pro wrestling on this channel. But before we dive in, I must disclose that I was a credentialed media member covering WrestleMania, and while I wasn't credentialed for Stand and Delivered, I was able to get a comp ticket for the show. And due to local connections, I was also able to get a comp ticket for TNA Unbreakable thanks to the fine folks at UNLV. The experiences I had will likely play a factor in what I thought of each show, but I will do my best to be open and honest regarding my thoughts. Just so you know, I wasn't a total mooch. I did purchase my tickets for the GCW WWE ID show and both Dragon Gate shows, and hey, I had a ticket to Stardom. That was until the WWE moved their media day to the exact same time of the show, but ah well, maybe next year, Stardom. My schedule went something like this: WWE ID show on Wednesday night, along with Dragon Gate. Thursday night, I went to TNA Unbreakable. Friday night, more Dragon Gate with some friends who weren't wrestling people that I got to drag along to the show. That was really fun. Saturday morning, NXT Stand and Delivered, followed by WrestleMania Saturday in the afternoon. Brought those friends that went to Dragon Gate with me. They also had a blast. We'll get more on that later. And then WrestleMania Sunday the next day. That's a lot of pro wrestling to consume live in 1 week's time. It might surprise you, but there are a ton of live professional wrestling shows that tend to piggyback off WrestleMania coming to your town. Game Changer Wrestling ran several events at the Palms Casino as part of what they were calling the Collective, and while some of those shows didn't pique my interest, there's always a high probability of something that might be out there for you. Independent wrestling during WrestleMania weekend is really my draw these days. Seeing companies and talents do shows that I otherwise don't have the opportunity to see is kind of what attracts me. I started with the WWE ID Tournament opening round show presented by GCW. I sat in the front row and got a collector's poster from the event, so that was pretty neat. I don't really follow GCW. It's not really my favorite style of wrestling, especially considering it's mostly predominantly deathmatch wrestling. I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments and freak out. I just chalk it up to being one of these things that is not for me. But nothing really stood out from this show. I thought it was mostly good indie wrestling. I don't like being overly critical of independent wrestlers. After all, they're learning and working on their craft. It was cool to see Kylie Ray wrestle again. She wrestled a few times here in New Orleans. And also, I enjoyed seeing Izzy. It's kind of crazy to think that she was the Bailey fan in the front row and now working matches. Good for her. I also enjoyed the match between Aaron Rourke and It's Gall. Never had seen or heard of either guy, and they put on a pretty damn good match. The main event was a rematch from the first episode of WWE Evolve. It was some fast paced 6 man action. It was fine. There was also something about the show being just under 2 hours that hit right. I don't need every wrestling event I attend to be 3 or 4 hours. Just throwing it out there, guys. After the show, I hit up the GCW ticket table and I asked what I would have to do to be credentialed as a media member covering these shows. The guy said I would have to talk to Brett Lauderdale, which is good information for next year when it's in New Orleans. Dragon Gate Rebirth was originally scheduled to take place at the Meet, Las Vegas, and for whatever reason it was moved to the Palms. Well, I was there already, so I decided to look at what tickets were available, and I decided, hey, look at that, a $30 standing room only ticket. I'm in. To kill time, I went to the food court in between the shows, hit up one of my favorites, Earl of Sandwich, had a ham and Swiss. It was fantastic. And then afterwards, made my way back over to the theater to watch wrestling show number 2 of the evening. So the standing room only ticket actually was more like a GA where you could sit anywhere in the lower bowl. I preferred this view compared to my floor seat earlier in the night. I also tend to prefer to be a little elevated for a wrestling show. Floor can be fun, but if you aren't in the first 2 rows, give me some elevation every day of the week so you can see more of the action going on once stuff spills outside of the ring. Dragon Gate was something I was looking forward to seeing live, but the first show left me wanting more. It wasn't bad, it just didn't live up to my hopes. It also made me wonder if I made the right call to do Dragon Gate The Revolution on Friday. The coolest part of this show was probably being able to see Ultimo Dragon wrestle, but I would also get to see him a couple days later. Thursday morning, I was walking around WrestleCon and I ran into a friend's friend. We started chatting a little bit, and I had mentioned that I had gone to the WWE ID show the night before. He tells me he heard bad feedback regarding that show and asked me what I thought. I was surprised quite a bit because none of the wrestling was bad. I told him I thought it was an okay show, but it's all about perspective. I don't view indie wrestling the same way I view television wrestling. I told him the only thing I would have done differently is have clean finishes for every match. Some of the matches clearly set up angles for next time or other independent wrestling shows that weekend. I thought that was a bit of a strange choice. I don't have the numbers to back this up, but I feel like a good majority of the people attending independent wrestling during WrestleMania weekends are first timers for most, if not every one of these promotions. A lot of this independent wrestling should be seen as introductions for your promotion and talent, and I think the best way to go about that is with clean finishes. Thursday night, I ended up at the Cox Pavilion on UNLV's campus for TNA Unbreakable. After getting in touch with some of my local contacts, I was told I could sit anywhere. I chose to sit in a section where zero folks were sitting outside of me, the TNA photographer, and where the hard cam set up. Unfortunately for me, TNA did some fantastic walk up numbers, and they did open up the section that I was sitting in. I'm glad TNA drew a good walk up crowd. They needed the section that I was in. For those 20 or 30 minutes, though, before the show, watching security escort and usher people away from the section I was in was quite amusing, especially watching them get mad, wondering why they couldn't use these seats. I was in a bit of wrestling heaven for those brief moments. I guess I should talk about the show a little bit. I think this was my first time seeing Laredo in person. He and Gringo put on a great opening lucha match to get the crowd pumped. I don't love triple threats, so having three of them in one night wasn't really my thing. I think my favorite match of the show might have been Moose versus Sidney Akeem. Watching big men ragdoll smaller guys will never get old. It was cool to see Elijah show up and serenade us with some music. In just under a year, I can say I've seen two legendary musical performances, Taylor Swift's The Eras Tour in New Orleans and Elijah playing Vegas. These are still two and three on my greatest concerts ever, as I attended Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming out of our shells at the Lakefront Arena when I was a small child. Oh, right, back to wrestling. I hated the barbed wire massacre match. I don't understand why any mainstream wrestling company tries to promote such garbage wrestling. I'm gonna try not to get too soapboxy, but I don't know. I saw a lot of people leave after it was over. Also, when they were preparing the ring, there was a member of the ring crew who didn't have gloves on as he wrapped the barbed wire around the ropes. So there's either one or two things going on there. It was gimmicked barbed wire, or that guy's just an idiot. I thought that was kind of amusing. I thought TNA Unbreakable was an enjoyable show with a hot crowd. I also really liked being part of a show that crowned a first time champion. I've attended a couple of TNA shows over the last year, and I have to say, I really enjoyed them both times. They put on some quality wrestling. If TNA comes to your town, I highly recommend seeing them live. Now on to Dragon Gate The Revolution on Friday night. This was the second Dragon Gate show of Wrestlemania Weekend. All the other previous wrestling shows I was flying solo. This time around, I brought two friends on for the adventure. My friends Sasha and Josh, who were Las Vegas locals. Josh had told me he had gone to live wrestling with some friends before, but he wouldn't consider himself that big of a fan or anything. Sasha had never experienced live pro wrestling. Lately, I've been really enjoying bringing non wrestling folks to attend live shows. As wrestling fans, we know it's a completely different atmosphere going and attending in person. If I were a wrestler, I would hate a fan like me. I'm very, very difficult to get to react or pop at a show. I think this has to do with being a fan for something for over 30 years. I've seen almost everything, but that's a whole other subject. When I bring non wrestling folks, they tend to react naturally and have genuine responses to what they're watching. In a way, I live vicariously through them. After being a little let down for the first Dragon Gate show, I was hoping this one was a much better one to impress my non wrestling friends. This was held at the Meet Las Vegas. It was a much smaller venue, maybe 500 seats. I'm not quite sure where this would rank in terms of the best wrestling shows I've ever attended, but it was up there in terms of the most fun I've ever had at a live event. I was hit with three separate dives at one point, used as a human shield in the main event, and my beer was used as mist. The match of the night was a fantastic tag team match for the Pro Wrestling Revolution Tag Team Championships. Some crazy stuff. And hey, I got to see Ultimo Dragon wrestle again, twice in 1 week. Awesome. My friends also said they had a blast and would be joining me for WrestleMania, so they'd see pro wrestling in both a tiny venue and a giant stadium for their first time on back to back nights. But before I get to WrestleMania, I must talk about NXT Stand and Deliver. Being from New Orleans, I wanted to go to NXT Stand and Deliver for one reason: Ricky Saints. Years ago, Ricky would wrestle down here in New Orleans at Wildcat Sports. I remember turning to my friend at one show and I told him, I think this guy could be somebody someday. Ricky would have a stint in the NWA, a good run in AEW, and eventually make his NXT debut. A little over a year ago, I sat down with Ricky at Lakefront Arena while he was still in AEW. It's just wild to see where he is now at this stage of his career. When I received the email that he would be attending Media Day, I knew we had to catch up. His journey was part of why I wanted to go to Vegas. Supporting one of my favorite wrestlers and a hometown guy on the biggest stage feels really awesome. Hoping next year he's wrestling in the Superdome and gets a Who Dat chant. As for Stand and Deliver, it was a great show. I will say being at 10 a.m. clearly did hurt the show. The crowd was lively, but it was far from a sellout, and I think being so early definitely impacted that. I was a little surprised when the WWE denied my media access for NXT Stand and Deliver, especially when I was cleared for World Media Day and WrestleMania itself. That wasn't a huge deal, but it's a little surprising when they said space was limited, and when I arrived, there were plenty of seats available. I mean, hey, you can see it in some of my footage. There are a lot of open seats. But the show was fantastic, and it feels like NXT always puts on a great major show. I guess I'll share this funny story about confusing the T-Mobile staff. I was comped a suite ticket, and when I got to the arena staff didn't know what to do with the ticket I had because the particular suite wasn't open for use. Someone eventually opened it for me, and there was no special staff or food or beverages available in the suite, but I was able to use my own private bathroom. It's the little things in life. I discovered after talking to the guy next to me and arena staff that the section that I was in was mostly seat fillers, so that was interesting. I also was an idiot and tripped and banged up my legs pretty bad on my way to T Mobile Arena. I've been recovering for several days, so that was fun. But I had a great time at Stand and Deliver. It was a really good show. Now on to the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania 41. I want to say, from a personal perspective, the least interesting thing about WrestleMania week is, well, WrestleMania. This tends to surprise both my family and friends as well. It's probably because I've attended 3 of them now. 30 made me tear up while attending, because growing up in New Orleans, I never felt we were much of a WWE territory and that WrestleMania would ever hit the Superdome. Our city has a unique history of professional wrestling, but it never felt the WWE grabbed a strong hold here. Only 4 years later, the WWE would return to New Orleans with WrestleMania yet again, and while I thought that was great for the city, it did take away some of the shine and specialness of the first event. I traveled to Dallas for WrestleMania 38 weekend, but I mostly stuck to WrestleCon and the shows that were part of it. Like I said, everything leading up to the showcase of the Immortals is what really draws me in these days. WrestleMania has become essentially a celebration of everything pro wrestling, and that's what I love about it. This is my 3rd WrestleMania, and while the luster for the event has worn off quite a bit, it was special because for the first time I was a credentialed member of the media covering the show. It also meant something to me because I was able to share something that I love so much with my friends and family in attendance. Maybe that makes me soft, but sharing something important in my life with people that I care about was just simply the best. But WrestleMania as an event this year, how was it? Yeah, it was fine. After some heavy traffic, I arrived at the stadium. Whose bright idea, by the way, was it to close every lane of traffic but one leading into the stadium? Lunacy. Complete lunacy. I arrived at the press entrance, got my credential, and I and several other reporters were brought to the press box. I didn't stick around much up there, just long enough to grab a picture. It was also surprising that the WWE had no swag bag for credentialed media covering the event, not even programs for folks. This isn't a complaint, mind you, I'm just comparing it to other major sporting events like the Super Bowl or college football bowl games. I can't speak what it was like watching the show up there. I didn't stick around very long, and I had a better option for seating elsewhere. I also didn't do the post show media scrums either night. On night 1, I had to leave to make The Undertaker's One Dead Man show, and on night 2, I was just too damn tired. I plan on attending these scrums next year in New Orleans. As stated, I had other plans where I'd be watching from. Long before I was credentialed as a member of the media, I was planning on attending and just going to all these events as a fan. After my interview with Ricky Starks and Eddie Kingston, I had a taste of something I really did enjoy doing. I thought to myself, well, I'll be in Vegas. I wonder if I could get media clearance and do some sort of synergy thing to promote the fact that WrestleMania will be in New Orleans next year. And sure enough, I talked to the right people and I made it happen. Prior to being credentialed, I had asked my cousin if he could help me out just scoring a ticket. In my wildest dreams, what I didn't expect would be that he would invite my friends and I to join him in his WrestleMania suite. Never would I have imagined the treatment in store for all of us. I would reach out to several people, but sadly it was just too short notice for them, but they were all there in spirit. Besides my family, I was joined with 3 friends in the suite. 2 of them were Las Vegas locals, Sasha and Josh. They had quite the experience at Dragon Gate the night before, and being non wrestling people, I was a little hesitant on asking if they wanted to check out WrestleMania. After all, they had just watched a much smaller wrestling show at a much more intimate venue. How could I ask them to consume even more wrestling, especially on back to back nights with 2 4-hour shows? WrestleMania is a spectacle, and people like spectacles, so they agreed to join me, and a fantastic time was had by all. I want to say I am forever appreciative of this experience I just had. I felt like it was like a once in a lifetime opportunity for me, and the likelihood of New Orleans comparing next year is just insanely unlikely, no matter how much fun I might have. Well, I guess I should give some thoughts about night one, right? After all, that's probably what you're here for. Jay is very popular with the people. I love Gunther. Gunther was available at Media Day, but he arrived late and I didn't get the opportunity to chat with him, so that was kind of a bummer. It didn't look like he was doing one on ones either. All the reporters were just gathered around with their microphones stuck in his face, and he was taking general questions. I just wanted to say thanks and tell him that he reminds me of why I love pro wrestling. The World Tag Team title match was a bit underwhelming. No disrespect to either the New Day or the Viking Raiders. I like both teams. It just didn't do it for me. And I think we would all have preferred to see the TLC Championship match for the WWE Tag titles instead, that was on SmackDown a couple days later. Being completely honest, most of the night didn't feel very WrestleMania y outside of the main event. Naomi managed to get a good match out of Jade. I like Jade, but she definitely needs the right opponent to work with. Jacob Fatu is really impressive. He's got this agile grace in a big man that just no one else has. Seeing a big man move the way he does, man, it's just really special. It was also special seeing Haku celebrate with him post match. I loved Haku. I popped for him. I would also have loved to have seen Ray wrestle Grande Americano, but Phoenix was a good substitute. Crazy to see Vikingo ringside at WrestleMania. I hope TKO keeps AAA its own thing and doesn't try to make it Mexican WWE. Keep Lucha Libre Lucha Libre. I thought Tiffany and Charlotte was pretty good, but it started really slow. Once the pace picked up, it was a pretty fantastic match. I really don't understand the hate Charlotte Flair gets sometimes. She's fantastic. The main event was the real star of night one, of course. CM Punk is one of the reasons I'm still a professional wrestling fan. Seeing him main event WrestleMania meant something to me. Paul Heyman joining Seth Rollins was a surprising turn of events. All of that was executed so well. I thought night one was an okay show with a fantastic main event. I think it would be an insult to call night one a one match show. The earlier matches were good, they weren't great though. Which leads me to this. Now, I think it's fair to address why WrestleMania isn't my favorite part of WrestleMania week. If you're a die-hard professional wrestling fan whose main focus is in ring action, there are smaller shows that will deliver that more often than WrestleMania. WWE started using it as a marketing term, but there's truth in that they're about making memorable moments more than having the five-star match. Which you prefer is really up to you. I just didn't feel like Saturday left very memorable WrestleMania moments outside of the opener and the main event. Let's move on to Sunday. After I checked out WrestleCon in the morning, I would go to the monorail, hop on, and walk from the MGM Grand to the stadium. I didn't think it was a very long walk. I was wrong on that, and I thought I would just save money on an Uber and get some exercise in. Like I said, the walk was longer than I expected, but it was nice to be around all the other wrestling fans heading into the stadium. Perhaps the funniest thing, though, was seeing the group of born agains preaching outside the stadium, damning us all to hell, and all the wrestling fans heckling them back with what chants. Who says wrestling fans can't be clever? After checking in, I was once again on the elevator on my way to the press box. I started listening to this elderly man praise the Paul Heyman turn. While he was praising it, he was talking about how he watches shows as a fan and not a critic. I thought that was a unique perspective. This man would tell us how he's been covering wrestling since the 70s, and I couldn't place his face at the time. It turns out this man was none other than Bill Apter of the Apter magazines. It was nice to have a brief conversation with the wrestling media legend. I sat in the press box briefly and snacked on a bag of chips as I waited for my friends and family to arrive to the suite. Once I got word they all arrived, I took one final picture from up above and headed down to hang out with them. Weird quirk of being in the suite, though, was just how insanely dark it was. It was difficult to see what food was put out because there were no lights or anything. I asked the lady who was our suite attendant why this was the case, and she had told me that the WWE had said the suite lights were messing with their broadcast production. I kinda laughed it off, but having worked in this world, I do understand. The food on night one felt like typical stadium food: chicken tenders, wings, hot dogs, etc. It was pretty good, but nothing to write home about. But night two, man, I don't know what happened, but the food quality stepped up like crazy. There was this incredible seafood tower with giant shrimp, crab legs, lobster tails, truffle mac and cheese, and some really awesome sushi. Look, guys, I don't know if I can fairly judge this show based on the food alone that I was able to consume while watching WrestleMania Sunday. There's something really wild and really special about eating lobster tails and fancy sushi while watching WrestleMania. It just hits different. I was living the dream. I guess it's time for my thoughts on WrestleMania Sunday. The women's triple threat may be the greatest triple threat match I've ever seen. I absolutely loved that match, though. I would not shut up about it after it was over. These ladies put on one of the best opening matches I've ever seen in my life, and they stole the show right from the very beginning. I don't really have much to say about Drew and Damian Priest. When I was reviewing my footage, I asked my brother what the hell that thing was in Drew's entrance. He told me it was a plug for the new Doom game, which then led us to a conversation about all the product placement that was happening at WrestleMania and how people were complaining about that. And while I can understand their point of views, it's just all about how it's implemented. The Intercontinental Championship 4-Way was a surprise hit for me. Seeing Penta on billboards around Las Vegas was pretty awesome. I once saw him wrestle Steve Anthony at Elevate Pro Wrestling in Louisiana, a match you can find on YouTube if you look hard enough. Dom is naturally over with the people as a babyface now. That match had a fantastic ending. Kevin Owens missing WrestleMania was a little bit of a bummer, but Joe Hendry was a nice surprise for the audience. I consider this more of a segment than a match, but it was cool to see the TNA World Champion partake in WrestleMania. I feel after that the show kind of trails off. I didn't really care about Logan Paul versus AJ Styles. AJ Styles should have been with a better opponent, and I just think Logan Paul's act has worn thin at this point. The women's tag title match had a returning Becky Lynch. She and Lyra would win the gold. The titles would then switch back the next night, and Becky would turn on Lyra rather quickly. I feel bad for Bayley missing out on WrestleMania. This just came across as a rather messy way to get to Lyra versus Becky. And speaking of messy, let's talk about a main event that was incredibly underwhelming and didn't deliver: John Cena versus Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship. It never felt like either guy was clicking. Maybe that's the intention with Cena's whole new shtick of "I'm here to ruin wrestling." Perhaps he's having bad matches on purpose, and if that's the case, it might be a brilliant move to avoid him from getting cheered. But I think the verdict's still out there on that one. I didn't care about the lack of Rock at WrestleMania. It was a little surprising that he didn't show up, but that didn't change my thought on the show one way or another. I do think the finish of the main event fell flat. Like at the end of the match, I thought to myself, oh, huh? That was it? Really? More than any sort of vitriolic anger towards Travis Scott or John Cena, history was made with the 17th title win, and I was rather apathetic to witnessing it. I don't think that was a great position for the WWE to put themselves in, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who left the stadium that night thinking the same thing. Love him or hate him, John Cena's 17th title victory should have felt important. Instead, it felt flat because everyone watching wanted more than what we got from the main event. Maybe one day we'll know the full story of why things went down the way they did at WrestleMania 41, but for now it remains a mystery. At the end of the night, the people I was with asked me what I thought of the show. I wasn't going to give them an overly critical, smart answer. I just asked myself a simple question: did I have fun? And the answer was yes, and I left it at that. Maybe if I had watched the show at home, I'd be a little more critical of it, but I have a hard time doing so considering the unique experience I had. Being at WrestleMania Live is an insanely different feeling than watching it on TV. I had an incredible experience in the suite, and I'm sure that factors in. And well, the whole weekend. Everything from Media Day to WrestleCon to World to the other wrestling shows I attended. As I've said multiple times by now, just sharing in the moments with friends and family were the real highlights of the experience for me. And after all, isn't that what life's about living for? I think every wrestling fan should at least experience WrestleMania and those surrounding events at least once in their life. If it's near your town or close by, you should do yourself a favor and check it out. Even if you aren't a huge WWE fan but like professional wrestling, I'm sure you can find something that week that will pique your interest. So there you have it. These are my stories from my WrestleMania Las Vegas trip. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me ramble about my WrestleMania Las Vegas experience. Talking about this stuff for 40 plus minutes was a bit of a struggle at times, but I really wanted to cover everything that goes on WrestleMania week when it comes to your town, and I think I managed to cover a good bit of that. From the different variety of wrestling shows to the two conventions to stand up shows to nightlife parties after dark, There really is something for everyone during WrestleMania week. It truly has become a celebration of everything pro wrestling, and pro wrestling is just the best. One last thought before I go. I hope this video was informative about just all the options that are available when WrestleMania comes to your town. In closing, laissez les bon temps rouler. I'll see you next year in New Orleans WrestleMania. Well, it was fun sharing my WrestleMania stories with you. I hope I have more of them to share next year. Oh, but before we go, I did an interview with the Rock and Roll Express before AEW Dynamite the Wednesday after WrestleMania. So that's up on my channel, and it would be nice if you all checked it out. So, see you next time.